All right, hey y'all. So let's talk about malefics and when they're transiting certain points in your natal chart. I feel like one of the most intense transits one can go through is having Pluto on the ascendant. So that means, like, if you are an Aquarius rising, now that Pluto is moving into Aquarius, you are going to experience that pivoting, dismantling, but like growth energy of Pluto, because Pluto is the great destroyer, but it also regenerates. And that's the beautiful thing about 8th house Pluto Scorpio placements is they fall hard, but they definitely rise from the phoenix. So I recently saw a video about someone saying, like, not to fearmonger and say that, if you have like Pluto transiting your 4th house, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily lose a parent. So I did have an experience when Pluto was transiting my 4th house where Pluto did remove one of my parental figures. My father passed away when I was 19, and that's when Pluto was in my 4th house transiting. Now, does that mean that's true for everyone? No, I don't think astrology is black and white like that. I think that it has to be the perfect storm. On that day that my father passed, we had also Mars squaring my sun, my natal sun. And in astrology, the sun represents our father, it represents the men in our lives. So having Mars squaring up to that, that can be accidents, that can be things happening, that can be like tension. So I think it was a combination, but natally I also have the sun in the 8th house. That's not always the best position for the sun. I mean, it can be intense, it could be highly psychic, but it can also mean the men in the querent's life could be disappointing or fleeting. Like they could they could be there and then be gone, or there could be these like situations where they pass away. Now, I've done a lot of research with people's charts that I've read over the last like 20 years, and I will say this, okay? So I do think it needs to be the perfect storm. Chiron and Neptune transits, especially afflicting like personal planets like the moon or the sun. The moon is the mother, the sun is the father, or even just like other close personal planets, that can onset physical illness. So I have seen that onset illness, especially Chiron. I feel like Chiron in particular does onset that sometimes, but it has to be the perfect storm. I think everybody's chart and transits are individual. Now, from my research that I've done, people that have Saturn transiting the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house, okay? Neptune transiting, any malefics. I mean, Neptune's not necessarily a malefic, but it is delusional. So Neptune isn't necessarily like as harsh in my opinion as like Saturn or Pluto, but it can keep our rose-colored glasses on so we're not seeing things clearly. But when we do have malefics like Pluto, Saturn, even Chiron transiting the 4th, 8th, and 12th house, I feel like it can really bring us to our knees, and it can really bring a major focus to whatever house that is. So in my case, when Pluto was transiting my 4th house, my father passed away, but Pluto is a very long transit. So it has to be pretty close. It has to be pretty precise. And when I looked at Pluto, I went and looked up the day that he passed away. Pluto was within that 5-degree orb of my ascendant, which is Virgo at 27 degrees. And Pluto at the time, I think, was around 24 degrees. So it is within that 5-degree. But at the same time, like, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So I think it's good to use astrology for knowledge. I don't think fear should ever really play. I don't think fear is ever the vibration you really should be going for. So if it's one of those things where it gives you anxiety, then, don't keep focusing on it. Like, I also have the moon in the 8th house, but I still have my mom, but it's like both the moon and the sun in the 8th house are challenging placements to have in your natal chart, but it's not something that I'm going to hyperfixate on because it's not going to do me any good just to be in that kind of obsessive energy. But the truth is, malefics, all the planets, are going to always be transiting a different portion of your chart individually. So I personally believe life is always suffering, and we just have to find a way to find joy in the suffering each day. And astrology is a tool, it's not the end all be all. And so, an astrologer that I got a reading from years ago said to me, look, like, it's like we're all going to the same place, but we all have a different roadmap to get there. And that's what astrology helps us with. It helps us give meaning to the things that happen in our lives and the things that we have to overcome and the things that we're going through. But it's always going to be individual. Like, I know a lot of Virgo risings. Like, I feel like I should run like a Virgo rising support group, but I know a lot of Virgo risings. And even though all of us are going through similar trends, like for instance with Saturn and Neptune in the seventh house, it's different for each of us. So even though it may, and I know someone who has their ascendant in the exact degree that I do, which is pretty cool. They're older than me, but we have the exact same degree Virgo rising. So that's always interesting when you find that and you see that and you observe it. But I really feel like astrology is more like, the art of observation. And it's like taking in what happens to you and taking notes, mental notes, writing it down, journaling, reflection. It's not meant to scare you and to freak you out. Like, I mean, it's almost like you have to be emotionally detached from the emotional side of it if you really want astrology to help you. Because when you start getting hyperfixated with that emotional energy, it can become so obsessive that it becomes like not conducive to helping you. So try your best to, take things with a grain of salt. And if and when it does actually occur for you, that's when you can reflect and be like, okay, this is what I needed to learn from this. Or we go through these intense transits, not necessarily to just bewilder us, but it does in fact do that sometimes, because that's what helps us actually change and become more. So I hope this helps you guys, and let me know if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover. Thanks.